So a number of people have requested a self-inquiry meditation. Some would just like to understand how to apply the principles of self-inquiry within the direct experience through meditation and contemplation. So I'll offer some reflections that might be helpful as to how to look, to investigate, to inquire within, and in the process perhaps uproot some fixed views and perceptions that we hold in relation to this thing we call myself. So really, effective self-inquiry can only take place when the mind becomes a little still, just still enough, quiet enough. It's very hard to see what's below the surface of the waves when the waves are crashing or when the water's muddy. Whichever metaphor you want to relate to, we have to allow some degree of calm to come into the mind if one is to effectively undertake a self-inquiry practice. So without forcing the mind, without setting up a kind of uptight goal, we'll just spend a little time at the beginning allowing the muddy water to settle, simply by noticing. Just notice what's happening right now in your experience without judging, without pushing away, or without holding or clinging to anything. You can start by noticing the external sounds. And without wanting to change or alter any of these external sounds, particularly if you have no control over them, to just allow them to be, making no problem of anything on the sense doors of the ears. And noticing how your body is feeling. If you can be aware of the physical sensations in different parts of your body and allow them just to be. If you need to shift or relax to get more comfortable, then do that just slowly, mindfully. And then internally, in terms of the mental movements of the mind, the thoughts, the waves of thoughts coming and going. Just start by noticing what's happening there. And whether you're a little bit stirred up or distracted. And again, it's just noticing, just awareness. Becoming an observer of these inner processes. Not an analyzer, not even a commentator, just a bare observation. And you can also notice what sort of emotional states might be coming and going. Tuning in to that subtle wave of emotions, whether you feel a little uneasy or bored or agitated or depressed or calm, peaceful. And see if you can really tune into yourself in terms of your own emotional state. But recognize that this too comes and goes, just like the waves on the ocean. So we need to allow some time at the beginning for things to settle, for things to calm, before we can undertake a more effective investigation. And true insight has to come with a good basis in samadhi or concentration. But it has to be just enough. It doesn't have to be super high levels of concentration. Just enough that we can start to investigate. And through the investigation, the inquiry, we can see a lot more clearly when the water's calm. But if we try to force things to quieten down, if we try to force our mind to be quiet, will actually just stir things up more. So just notice if you're doing any of this. And again, just notice and release. Just keep releasing, letting go, not grasping anything. And even if you start to feel a deep peace or bliss or calmness or whatever, don't grasp that either. Just notice it's here and it's changing. Everything is changing. So once we really start to see and recognize the changing nature of all phenomena, internal, external, you can just hold that question in mind. Who am I in all of this? Now don't go looking for an answer. Just keep your mind open and empty. And while the mind holds this question, who am I? Just see what comes naturally from a place of calm, from a more intuitive sense. When you ask that question or hold that question gently, inquisitively. Who do I take myself to be? Or what do I take myself to be? So I can feel that there is a body here, a bodily form. It has a weight that we can understand relates to the earth element. And we can feel that heaviness, that solidity. We can see internally with the mind's eyes. We understand there's a skeleton, bones and marrow, organs. So get a sense of your own weightiness, your own heaviness, earth element. And notice that feeling of gravity that's actually allowing us to stay on this earth. Without gravity, we'd all be floating in space. There is the earth element. But this body is also composed of the water element. And you can feel the watery part of your body when you investigate the spittle, the blood, the wateriness in the eyes, the cohesion that we feel. So there's the water element of this bodily form. We can see too, we can investigate that there's the air element. The breath coming in, the breath going out. That's the most obvious manifestation of the air element. The oxygen flowing throughout all the cells within the body. And there's the air within, the air without. We perceive it as inside and outside, but as we go deeper we can see these boundaries, these distinctions start to dissolve, to break down. And we can feel that the air element within, the air element without, is all just part of the one whole. And there's the fire element within this body. Without fire, you wouldn't have any heat to keep this body burning. The fuel that we eat and consume is the fuel that keeps this body alive. And our digestive system does its work to burn up this energy. So you can feel the warmth happening in various parts of your body. Some parts of your body will be more obvious where this fire element is. And if the fire is not particularly hot, we might feel cold, but it's still part of that elemental nature of fire. So cool or heat. Just like the air element, The fire outside, the fire inside. No different. Just a perception. And a false perception at that. And lastly, there's the space element. Our bodies are said to be comprised of 99.9% space. If we could really perceive that, to see that, how amazing. We're actually mostly space element. But without trying to think about that intellectually or rationally, just get a sense of the space element. It's not something you can see or point to or hold on to, but intuitively to notice space. Space between each thought, between each sound. The spaciousness that you can feel internally within your own body. And sometimes when you're meditating, you really get a deep sense of this spaciness. And sometimes you can feel like you're floating in space, which effectively we are. So these 5 elements, comprised within the body, comprised within the external world, no different. But you can ask yourself, you can reflect, you can contemplate. Am I any of these elements? If so, which one? Which element am I? And if you choose to believe that you are one or more of the elements, do you notice how these elements are constantly changing, constantly arising, dissolving, and being reborn? Each moment, this body is changing, dying, being reborn. Every cell in our body dies every day, and we get new ones. So which is the me, the self, in all of this? It's clear, isn't it? We are not our bodies. There's no self, abiding self, unchanging self within this body. This body is comprised of the 5 elements. The 5 elements are part and parcel of this earth, of this universe. No different, not separate, but not a self. So who am I? If I'm not my body, what about my mind? Am I my thoughts? Am I this idea I hold in myself, this perception I hold within myself of me? So look at that now. Who do you think you are? Which idea is presenting itself right now about you and your personality and your history and your self-image? Which ones come to the fore? And whatever's come to the fore, is that going to stay? Is that going to stick around? Don't you feel a little bit different now than you did 10 minutes ago in terms of your self-view? So if that's the case too, if everything's constantly changing in terms of our perceptions of ourself, which one are you? So how can you be a perception, an idea, a thought? How can you be any of those things or take any of those things to be who you are? When in actuality, you can't hold any of it. You can't present any of them. There's nothing concrete about a perception or an idea or a thought. Completely substanceless, but we take it to be real so often. And then we concretize it. We reify it. We bring it into being as a so-called reality. And then it dictates everything about our relationships, about the way we see ourselves, the way we react and respond in the world. But you can see, can't you, right now, any idea, any perception, any thought, gone in a flash. Nothing to show for it. How can it be me? How can it be a self? So what is it that we're taking ourselves to be? And when we let go of clinging to any idea, or any idea that we might be this mind, have you ever found your mind? Have you ever seen your mind? When you look right now, without any ideas, judgments, perceptions, memories, projections, it's completely empty. The mind is space. Empty like space and open. Can you be okay with that? Can you sit with that right now? In this wide, open, empty space, without being anything, any idea, any concept. Can you sit with the unknowing? We so desperately want to know. We so desperately want to be. We so desperately think that we have to figure it all out. But can you let go of all notions of self? And if you start to posit an idea of a big self, because you've read about it somewhere, or that you've got some idea formed in your mind that you are the big self, if you're holding an idea, a concept, a perception, then that's all it is. Another idea. Another memory or an image. So can you drop that too? Whatever you've read, whatever you've imagined, even whatever you've believed that the masters have told you, can you drop it right now and be completely empty? Completely naked in not knowing anything. In not being or becoming anything. And so what remains? We just know there's awareness. A simple knowing without knowing anything. The simplicity itself. Innocence. Humility. To not think we even know who we are. Because whatever we posit about what we think ourselves or ultimate reality to be, any positing is simply that, an idea, a concept. So we keep letting go. We keep shedding these layers of delusion, these veils of ignorance. And as we do that, we notice that there's a natural peace, a natural stillness. To be completely here and now. Without having any sense of a self going on. But whenever something pops up, a thought, an image, a feeling, just notice, do you start to cling to that one? Do you start to grasp that as a me? And if the minds become still, more quiet, it's much easier to see through this and to keep dropping it. So this whole practice of self-inquiry is not to arrive at a conclusion or a final answer of, this is who I am, this is myself. It's rather a shedding everything of oneself. Because all those things that we cling to, that we construct, are false. And you can see this with keen insight if you're willing to look, if you're willing to keep dropping, shedding, to stop clinging to anything. And that includes not grasping any blissful experience or unitive experience. Or any experience of kind of feeling that there's all just one consciousness. Because as soon as you start labeling, fixating, or arriving at a definitive conclusion, you form something again. Even a very subtle idea, concept. So we're careful about not even forming concepts about this awareness itself. Because if you look clearly and calmly at awareness, it's nothing you can grasp. It's nothing you can define. But you know it intuitively. It's just this, awareness itself. Without it being any particular thing. But don't make a self out of that as well. Forming no concepts, no fixed views. Simply being awareness itself. And this awareness itself and abiding in that consistently, continuously throughout the day. In the formal sitting, we can go deeper into that awareness, but this awareness is always there, it's the background. It's the backdrop to everything. And it never goes. It's just that we lose our connection to it. It becomes veiled by thoughts, by emotions, by distractions. But this awareness is the portal. Or as the Buddha said, we abide in this awareness, this mindfulness. It is the gate to the deathless. It's the portal to the Absolute. But it requires us really emptying out in all humility. Thinking that we can go through the door we can attain the absolute. For if there's anyone or anything that thinks that I'm going to get something, I'm going to attain enlightenment, we're far away. Because we're still there as a self. So to sit patiently, without wanting, without grasping, without any expectations. To be, and to be okay with just being. And to allow the unfoldment. And this can only happen when we completely die to all ideas of ourself. We have to die to concepts, to beliefs, to views, opinions. And in dying, we're actually reborn into the truth. So may you all continue to shed, to release, and may we all come to see in truth what we truly are. Old rock stairs through bamboo forest, climbing the mountain, rain-washed ground. Our path opens out, a clearing appears, hermitage of sweet stillness, a humble jewel. The heart delights, an Eden found. The fine eye and hand of cause and effect knows beauty. We meet each other and bow a deep smile. How long have you been here? 2.5 years, waiting for you. Solitary hut, we sit midst the hills, in the perfection and balance of elements here. Stillness revels. You serve me sweet tea, cradling the bowl, empty, content. My mind knows bliss. Misty mountain magic, a view on eternity, within and without. There is only one thing here. I think to ask you for a poem, and suddenly you speak a verse by Sosan. The flower laughs. 100 peaks appear in the clouds. Rain falls, forest sings, and the mountains whisper deep knowing all around. I want to hear a poem of yours. There's the wind and the rain, you gesture. There's nothing more to say. time falls away. A bullfrog crawls under the shelter of the eaves. I could spend a century drinking tea here, this way. I ask of your practice, and you speak of mu. Why doesn't the dog have Buddha nature? Hua to. A poem I offer now for you, of sorrow and sweetness, of emptiness and fullness. Is mu no, or no thingness? Ah, you see, there's nothing more beautiful than this nothingness. What sweet relief to remember. Rain falls. The hand shapes marks in time. Forever is here. Great virtuous one. Three deep bows, O Dharma brother, not goodbye. My heart sings in the mountain hermitage of Mu.